The time is precisely 6:15 p.m. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. News edited by Dulmin Samarasinghe and read by Chandima Virakon. Headlines. India partners with Sri Lanka for renewable energy sources. The Prime Minister instructs central bank officials to minimize problems when deducting loan payments from the public. The opposition prepares to introduce a no-confidence motion against Energy Minister. The Health Ministry says no decision has been taken to minimize PCR tests. In news overseas, Indian scientists say they didn't back doubling of COVID vaccine gap. In sports news, it's Euro 2020. Ronaldo breaks record as Portugal cruise past Hungary. India has become the first country to partner with Sri Lanka in fulfilling the vision of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to ensure that 70% of Sri Lanka's national power requirements are fulfilled by renewable energy sources by 2030, as reiterated during his address at the recently concluded Sri Lanka Investment Forum. In this context, an agreement extending a $100 million line of credit to Sri Lanka for projects in the solar energy sector signed between the Government of Sri Lanka and the Export-Import Bank of India was exchanged by the High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, Gopal Bagle, and the Secretary to the Treasury, S.R. Artigala, in the presence of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa today. The Indian High Commission said this line of credit will help finance various projects in the solar energy sector in Sri Lanka, including those announced during the founding conference of the International Solar Alliance held in March 2018, such as rooftop solar photovoltaic systems for households and government buildings. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa has instructed central bank officials to take steps to minimize problems when deducting loan payments from the public who are facing various difficulties due to the pandemic. The Prime Minister gave the instructions during a discussion today at the Temple Trees. The central bank representatives briefed the Prime Minister on maintaining a strong economy amid the pandemic. The Prime Minister pointed out the need to provide financial relief to the people under prevailing circumstances. Samagi Jana Balavegaya has signed a no-confidence motion against Minister Udaya Ganmanpila. Signing of the motion commenced this morning at the opposition leader's office in Colombo. It has been prepared under 10 points. One of the accusations is that maintaining higher fuel prices up to now when the oil price was heavily reduced in the world market from January 2020. Another accusation is that not informing the public or parliament about the profit earned by not reducing fuel price by the Petroleum Corporation and the government. The no-confidence motion states that the minister has not revealed to the parliament about the situation of the fund set up by the government to stabilize price by using the advantage of the reduction of price when the oil prices increase. It was also stated that the subject minister is responsible for the negative impact on the entire economy due to increased production expenditure with the price hike. The Health Ministry says that the government has not taken a decision to minimize PCR tests. 18,257 PCR tests have been conducted yesterday. Director General of Health Services Dr. Asela Gunawardena said 3,979 rapid antigen tests were conducted yesterday. Meanwhile, 50,000 second doses of the Sputnik 5 vaccine will be given to the people in Kandy tomorrow. During a media briefing today, Dr. Dilhara Samaravira said that elders should be given priority to their health and well-being amid the pandemic. The Finance Ministry has given permission to the Excise Commissioner to sell liquor online. Commissioner General of Excise W.J. Gunasili said that relevant regulations should be followed when selling liquor online. Special search operations conducted by the Navy this morning in the beach areas of Kontampeddi, Mana and Aripu in Silavatura led to the seizure of over 370 kilograms of smuggled dried turmeric and 294 kilograms of kendi leaves and apprehension of 2 suspects in connection with the racket. In a separate incident, the Northwestern Naval Command was able to find about 294 kilograms and 100 grams of kenda leaves attempted to be smuggled in by sea during a patrol conducted in Aripu Beach this morning. The Consular Affairs Division of the Foreign Ministry organized a ceremony to hand over letters of compensation of the deceased Sri Lankan workers abroad to their respective family members at the ministry premises in line with the International Domestic Workers' Day, as well as the International Day of Family Remittances held on 16th June 2021. Foreign Minister Dinesh Gunabadana, together with other officials, handed over the letters of compensation amounting to 30 million Sri Lankan rupees to the family members of deceased migrant workers overseas, received from their respective employers abroad through Sri Lanka missions abroad. This news comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Continuing with the local stories, former director of the CID, Shani Abesekara, has been released on bail along with and former sub-inspector of CID, Sugat Mendes. They were released under strict bail conditions when the case was taken up today before the appeals court. The two suspects were released on a cash bail of 25,000 rupees and two personal bonds worth 1 million rupees each. The suspects were ordered to hand over their passports to the court. Chairman of the local shipping agency, Arjuna Hettiarachchi, representing the Express Pearl vessel, has been granted bail by the Colombo High Court. Chairman of Sea Consortium Lanka Private Limited, Hettiarachchi, was arrested by the CID today after surrendering through his attorneys. He was released on a cash bond of 100,000 rupees and two personal bonds of 1 million rupees each. The judge also banned Mr. Hettiarachchi from leaving the country and ordered him to hand over his passport to the court. He is charged under the Marine Pollution Protection Act. The Elections Commission today said that the UNP had sent its leader Ranil Wickremesinghe's name to be gazetted as a National List MP. UNP General Secretary Palit Rangapandara said that Mr. Wickremesinghe's name was handed over to the Elections Commission today. Mr. Wickremesinghe is to be sworn in as an MP on 23rd of this month. The International Nitrogen Management Systems, jointly with the United Nations Environmental Programme, has planned to implement a multi-purpose research proposal based in the Asian region, including Sri Lanka, with regard to the utilization of fertilizer with nitrogen in various cultivation fields. This project is planned in view of the huge environmental impact and destruction due to non-management of chemical fertilizer varieties containing a high nitrogen percentage in Asian countries. To end the local news, the headlines again. India partners with Sri Lanka for renewable energy sources. The Prime Minister instructs central bank officials to minimize problems when deducting loan payments from the public. The opposition prepares to introduce a no-confidence motion against Energy Minister. The Health Ministry says no decision has been taken to minimize PCR tests. That ends local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
And on the main news story, the meeting between President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Tamil National Alliance, which was scheduled today, has been postponed. Tamil National Alliance media spokesman parliamentarian M.A. Sumandiran has mentioned this in his Facebook page. He has said that they will get another date and time for the discussion. That ends the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
Moving on to Watch Light. Tourism Minister Prasanna Ranatunga has instructed the relevant officials to formulate short and long-term plans for flood control in Gampaha along with all stakeholders. The minister was speaking at a meeting yesterday to discuss the initiatives to be taken to control floods in Gampaha. That ends Watch Light. Moving on to the world news, the headlines. Indian scientists say they didn't back doubling of COVID vaccine gap. The North Korean leader calls for measures to tackle the country's tense food situation. Japan plans drone deliveries. The Indian government doubled the gap between the 2 doses of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine without the agreement of the scientific group that it said recommended the increase, 3 members of the advisory board have told media. The Ministry of Health announced the decision to change the gap from 6 to 8 weeks to 12 to 16 weeks on May 13th, at a time when supplies of the shot were falling short of demand and infections were surging across the country. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has called for measures to tackle the country's tense food situation as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and last year's typhoons, which damaged the harvest. Kim told a plenary meeting of the governing Workers' Party's Central Committee the overall economy had improved in the first half of the year, with total industrial output growing 25% from a year before. Japan's Postal Service is working on delivery drops from the sky. It's teamed up with a domestic drone manufacturer to offer the service by 2023. Japan Post Group plans to invest about $27 million in development cost in autonomous control systems laboratory. The drones will be able to carry parcels. Japan Post believes the systems will be particularly useful for deliveries in mountainous areas and on remote islands. To end the world news, the headlines again. Indian scientists say they didn't back doubling of COVID-19 vaccine gap. The North Korean leader calls for measures to tackle the country's tense food situation. Japan Post plans drone deliveries. That ends world news. On to the development news. The Ceylon Petroleum Corporation signed a memorandum of understanding with the Hambantota International Port Group to develop Hambantota Port as a strategic energy centre in Sri Lanka. The signing ceremony was held at the Ministry of Energy with top officials of Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and Hambantota International Port Group participating. That ends development news. And on sports, Cristiano Ronaldo became the all-time top scorer at the European Championships after 2 goals in the final minutes helped holders Portugal beat Hungary 3-0 in their Group F opener yesterday. Ronaldo now has 11 goals in the competition, taking sole possession of the record he previously shared with France's Michel Platini on 9. Several people have been taken to hospital to receive treatments for injuries caused by a protester who parachuted into the Allianz Arena during France's win over Germany. European football's governing body, UEFA, said law authorities will take the necessary action for what it called a reckless and dangerous act. Debris fell on the pitch and stands when the parachutist got tangled in wires carrying an overhead camera. That ends sports news.
Contributory deposit of 1,000 rupees from NSB when your child enters grade 1. Open a Hapan Children's Service account for your kid today. Higher interest. Conditions apply. Business News. Sponsored by National Savings Bank. The safest place for your money.
The Board of Directors of Nations Trust Bank has decided to raise up to 44 billion rupees via an unlisted, rated, unsecured, senior redeemable debenture issue. Accordingly, the bank is planning to issue 30 million unlisted, rated, unsecured, senior redeemable debentures of the par value of 100 rupees each, with an option to further issue 10 million of the same debentures in the event of the oversubscription of the initial issue. That ends Business News.
Business News. Sponsored by National Savings Bank. The safest place for your money. Contributory deposit of 1,000 rupees from NSB when your child enters grade 1. Open a Hapan Children's Service account for your kid today. Higher interest. Conditions apply.
Economic news. courtesy of...
I bought my daughter a laptop for her work by managing my finances. Whatever the expenses may be, I can't afford to miss out on life's special moments like her birthday or our anniversary. So you need to invest to make your family's future flourish.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibilities. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act number 42 of 2011.
On economic news, manufacturing activities contracted during May due to adverse impacts of the third wave of COVID-19 pandemic and related restrictions imposed to contain the virus spread. The manufacturing recorded an index value of 42.1 in May 2021, with a fall of 2.2 index points from the previous month, mainly driven by the significant contraction in production, employment, new orders and stock of purchases sub-indices. That ends economic news.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibility. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act number 42 of 2011.
Weather report was sponsored by
Dialogue, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, introduces Nanasa, a trilingual educational mobile app with video-based lessons for grade 1 to A-levels. Now your child can study with ease on your mobile with no subscription fee.
And finally, on the weather report, the Met Department says several spells of showers will occur in western, central and Sabaragamu provinces and in Gaul and Mathura districts. Wind speed will be 30 to 40 kilometers per hour in the western slopes of the Central Hills, northern, north central and northwestern provinces and in Hambantota and Trincomalee districts. The wind speed can be increased up to 50 kilometers per hour at times in those areas. That ends the weather report.
Weather report was sponsored by
Dialogue, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, introduces Nanasa, a trilingual educational mobile app with video-based lessons for grade 1 to A-levels. Now your child can study with ease on your mobile with no subscription fee.
And to conclude this bulletin of news, the headlines again. India partners with Sri Lanka for renewable energy sources. The Prime Minister instructs central bank officials to minimize problems when deducting loan payments from the public. The opposition prepares to introduce a no-confidence motion against Energy Minister. The Health Ministry says no decision has been taken to minimize PCR tests. In news overseas, Indian scientists say they didn't back doubling of COVID vaccine gap. In sports news, Ronaldo breaks record as Portugal cruise past Hungary. With that, we conclude this bulletin of news from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.